Hello and happy, well, I don't know if it's happy for Phillies fans, but happy 10:37 p.m. emergency podcast. And of course, Renee, our emergency podcasts are brought to you by Indeed. Listeners of this show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/all-city. That's Indeed.com/all-city. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed. Renee, I mean, I can't say I'm surprised at all. Juan Soto is a Met. 15 years, $765 million. It includes an opt-out after 5 years. It includes a $75 million signing bonus, on average $51 million per year to be a New York Met. Steve Cohen gets his guy and outbids the Yankees, who apparently went 16 years for $760 million. Juan Soto back in the NL East.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is thank you, Juan, for at least doing this prior to, I know I was getting ready for bed. So how nice of them to get this deal done in time on this Sunday evening. Also a great way to finish up day one of the winter meetings. We had the expectation that Juan Soto was going to be signed before the winter meetings ended, but did we think it was going to be in a dramatic fashion? Absolutely. I'm getting messages now from Mets fans that I know that are like bragging and saying all their ha-ha-has. But to hear that 15 years, 765, listen,
you're still the Mets.
The reality is we knew it was going to be a lot of money, and we just wanted to make it as high as possible of a spending point for the Mets because Steve Cohen was going to throw $50 million on whatever anybody else proposed. So once the Yankees pitched out that 16-year deal for $47.5 million AAV, here comes the Mets to top it. Now, the crazy thing about this deal in its historic fashion, as it's the largest deal in professional sports history, is the fact that we're hearing the $765 million price point, but the reality is he can actually make much more than that. So there's various reports, but essentially, exactly.
That's all I need to hear. He can make
between all the other contingencies, he can make upwards of $800 million. None of it is deferred, which is also very important to keep in mind. And there's so many sources that have been putting out this information. Juan Soto got paid. The Mets got their guy, and now we have to think about what does this mean for the rest of the league, but also most importantly for the Phillies.
Yeah, no doubt there's a direct impact here to the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, the question remains with the Mets, how perverted is Steve Cohen going to get here? Is he going to go, does this mean, I'm spending $51 million, I'm not letting Pete Alonso go, and I'm going to sign Corbin Burnes? I would imagine Pete Alonso is back with the Mets, so I would imagine he's going to probably shell out there. And then you have to think their weak spot now, because they do have some nice young pieces paired up with two MVP caliber players in Lindor and Soto. Their weakness is pitching. And if Steve Cohen goes out now that this is done and the winter meetings just got underway, if he's talking to Corbin Burnes and Max Fried this week, then it becomes a slightly horrifying proposition. And the two biggest players in baseball, Renee, the Dodgers and the Mets, at least in terms of financially, both happen to reside in the NL. So it has a major impact on the Phillies. And how much do they want to spend? How much do they want to trade? Does Aiden Miller get shopped around now because they know they have to push in with this window? It's a great question. A big week ahead in Phillies land.
Yeah, and listen, we had already heard the report that Clay Holmes agreed to a 3-year deal with the Mets. He is one that was looking for a starting role. We've already heard Willy Adames is off the board. He's headed to the Giants. And even Max Fried has been reported to be tied to the Red Sox and Yankees as the two favorites. But when it comes to the Mets and their deep pockets, and the Dodgers are in the same situation, I don't ever count them out for any sweepstakes. I mean, realistically, they have a whole other plan when it comes to offseason acquisitions because they're willing to spend whatever it takes. And now knowing they, in the course of this weekend, it's Clay Holmes, and then of course the biggest piece, Juan Soto, they're not done. The Mets have already been very active as is, and have already had reports coming out mentioning, regardless if they were or were not to get Juan Soto, they plan to be aggressive. So now I feel like it is a race for those next signings of who's off the table, because it's that big domino that's going to create a major ripple effect. But congrats to Juan Soto, I guess you could say, for him to get paid. He deserves
Hell
it.
yeah. I would be like Dave Chappelle and
Listen,
half-baked signing that
sucks that
contract.
he's in the NL East, but like, congrats to you. Go get your bag. Go get paid. You get to stay in New York, and you just flip over to the Mets in Citi Field. But this is a historic moment in sports history because it just shows us last year's Shohei Ohtani record deal, which we thought was like the most earth-shattering. 1 year later, already that's been broken by day one of the winter meetings. This is where the sport is going. I know Adam Schefter tweeted out, like, no NFL deal is close to this. Like, baseball is in a league of its own, quite literally, with these types of salaries that we're seeing breaking.
Yeah, and the Phillies need to improve. You know, John Middleton has talked a big talk this offseason and several off seasons, you know, that he wants his trophy back and this and that. Well, the price has gone up, and there's a very good chance that bringing in that new ownership group, it was fueled by this, knowing that, you know, yesterday's price is not today's price. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Phillies do because the Mets just became the talking point of Major League Baseball. Now, Jim Salisbury is down in Dallas right now. He is going to be joining our show every day this week. We're going to be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Discussing this and more, but it's going to be very interesting to see who the Phillies are talking to this week, how they plan to upgrade this team because left field is still a glaring need. Does Garrett Crochet, does Luis Castillo, how frequently are they going to be making trades? So a lot to see this week, and it's going to start tomorrow, Renee, at 11 a.m. We'll talk to Jim Salisbury and get the latest, but it should be a pretty wild couple days down in Dallas.
It should be, and I'm very intrigued to see which direction the Phillies go now. I mean, a name we had talked about, like a Tyler O'Neill, is off the board.
Willie Adames is gone.
Right, Willie Adames is gone. Sasaki's expected to be posted this week, so he's also got now a window, a 45-day window that we're keeping an eye on. And then I know I even heard and saw the reports that John Morosi put out earlier today on Sunday that Garrett Crochet's trade is getting closer, and it's increasingly possible he's going to get moved at the winter meetings. But is he going to get moved to the Phillies?
I would imagine the Red Sox
question.
Thought they had a good shot at Juan Soto, so now are they like, screw it, do whatever it takes. Tristan Casas, here you go. Give me Garrett Crochet. And
exactly.
then maybe Teoscar and you know, Michael Conforto signed with the Dodgers, and they're apparently still in on Teoscar Hernandez. So the price of money in baseball is just flat out stupid at this point. Michael Clayton asked, what moves do you anticipate happening if it's not jaw-dropping? I don't, like an Anthony Santander would be great. I think a lot of things are going to come through trade. I think a lot is unknown, and I would imagine that the Phillies brass, as we close up for the evening, are probably just making a pot of coffee. They're probably not going to have the best night's sleep of their life, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we've got all week to dive into this, so make sure you guys are ready to tune in live 11 a.m. as you mentioned, with Jim joining us from the winter meetings to give updates with he's got a pulse to the ground down in Dallas. I do think that moves like an Alec Bohm, potential trade, those things, I don't see it happening during the winter meetings. I feel like what they're going to do is, as you mentioned, like an Anthony Santander, a one-year deal that we'll see.
MBDBF says, that's not a needle mover. Yeah, you're going
to I don't think it's going to be a needle-moving move for the Phillies.
Trade is the only needle mover out there. I mean, free agency is weak. So
I just anticipate, to be honest, free agency is lower hanging fruit, I guess you could say. There's less moving parts. I would see them doing a free agent signing during the winter meetings, and then I think any sort of a jaw-dropping trade for the Phillies is going to happen later in this offseason. I think it's just going to take too much time, especially these are guys you're invested in for the future, or the past, I should say. The Alec Bohms, for example, it's not going to happen this quickly. So I imagine a 1 year, 2 year deal, some free agent signings. But fortunately, Jamie, we've got all week to get into it and unpack all the excitement, hopefully, that is happening down with the winter meetings.
Yeah, so we'll talk to Jim Salisbury tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. We'll be back. But Juan Soto is a very, very rich man. And the beautiful thing about this is it guarantees them nothing. I do wish Steve Cohen had to pay $900 million, which he wasn't too far off of. So I hope it fails for them in spectacular fashion. It's going to be very rich fashion. Buying players does not guarantee you anything. We'll see what happens. But I know
the last thing I want to add, Jamie, before we wrap up.
The early sentiment is people are saying, "Oh, third place in the NL East, here we come." So it's not.
I like that. I like those vibes that everyone's bringing into the chat. Still not bothered, still not too worried about it. But I will say the last thing is execs and GMs anticipated this winter meeting was going to be exciting, crazy, a lot of aggressive trade talks and moves happening. So if this is how day one is kicking off, what will we get in store for tomorrow? We'll
be back at 11 a.m. and Jim will join us from Dallas. Until then, to everybody that was in here, panic not. Maybe a little bit if you want, but the Mets just signed the biggest free agent in sports history, and now you have to see him a lot. But we'll be back tomorrow talking about it all and all the rest of the rumors. To everybody in here that hung out with us, thank you. We appreciate you, and we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. And this emergency was brought to you by Indeed. So head to Indeed.com/AllCity. And thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
We all silly like the mayor.